Saturday, another version of this that I'm doing today on this lovely Saturday that we have in front of us. So, as I usually do, hi, my name is Ashley. For any of you that do see me later or may see me right now, hello, I'm Ashley. I'm a higher self channeler by trade, and I'm also a mistress prophetess at night. It's my dual gang up that I do on Saturday nights. I just came from my neighbor's place. We had a lively talk, and then I came to perform this live as pronounced and as promised. So, as I usually do, I do a poll to see what you guys are interested in, and it seemed like shadow aspects or shadow self is what people want to talk about, and how to work in the shadow or how to just acknowledge that we have a shadow. That's basically what I'm here to talk about today. If you're somebody that works and does shadow work, then maybe this isn't for you, but maybe it is, because maybe I'm going to enlighten things that you've never thought of. Also, if you've never even heard of the shadow, this will be for you, because I'm going to walk us all through it. And then I'm also going to talk about topics that have to do with the shadow, what it seems to be the main framework sometimes. And I definitely want people to see that too. So how I'm going to start this is the shadow is the aspect of yourself that you don't want to face. The shadow is the aspect of yourself that you keep hidden to yourself and hidden to others. So the reason why I say it's hidden to you is because sometimes, unless life shows you that you're afraid of this situation, you may not clue into the fact that it's a shadow aspect. A lot of people think that the shadow is like the dark, seedy, underhanded part of yourself, and that's not truly what it is. It's actually more to do with your desires and fears. Usually, if you're talking shadow work, one of the main people I would say is Carl Jung or Carl Jung, whichever way you want to say it. Jungian thinking has to do more so to do with desires and fears, and I'm a big fan of this. And I actually started my shadow work just as an introspector. I didn't know what I was doing with shadow work all through my ascension journey as I've come through this time. And a lot of it I've been doing for many, many years. And I never knew it was until I ran into this guy. And I was like, hey, I'm like, there's someone else talking about this. And sooner or later than it seemed like on an ascension journey or any journey through life of introspection, you end up doing this shadow work majority of the time, and you will continue until you've freed yourself of all these fears and desires. More so to do with the fears, because they are attached to the desires. And that's why when people are like, oh, it has to do with something seedy, it's like, no, it's actually what you're scared of. So if what you're scared of is seedy, then hey, then it's seedy. But what I will say is that if they're not addressed or they're not challenged within your life, you're going to notice that you tend to retaliate in more seedy ways, be it like through your anger, your aggression, your standoffishness. You start to repel certain situations simply because you're not facing your shadow. And then you can become more of this seedy, underbellied person that you're thinking shadow sides have to be about. But that's really not what it is. So what I want to talk about is the desires, the same desires that most of us human beings have. And what they tend to be is around money, around love, around success, and around happiness. Those are four simple ones. Four simple desires that almost all of us could raise our hand and say that we have in this lifetime. Money, love, success, and happiness. So those are desires that we all possess or want or are in pursuit of. And how you address your shadow, because I don't think any of us have this all handled, or we wouldn't be doing the shadow work needed to attain those things. And usually it's because of fears that we have associated with those desires that are part of our shadow, what we're not willing to face in our life to achieve those things. So when it comes to money, the shadow aspect that you may be having a challenge is like your lack mentality. And when people say lack mentality, they think it's just because you live in lack, but it's also to do with a conditioning. Let's say, for example, if you're somebody who had a lot of money growing up, you might not have this issue per se. You might. It just depends on how money was dealt out while you were a child, etc. But let's say, for example, you grew up in a life situation that didn't really afford you much. you would tend to build your whole perception of your world as you grow up in what people would call a lack mentality, because you didn't see much. So therefore, the world that you've always perceived has been one of not a bounty or a plentifulness. So that is kind of far reaching for some people. For some of us, we do have, let's say, more of an abundant background growing up, and we may not lack in that way. So you may not have that association, and that's a form of shadow that you may not possess. But for those of you that do feel like money is one of those things that seems hard to attain, you might want to look into something of as to which, if you have lack mentality, or you feel like you're not going to live in abundance, or like I said, if you've lived in poverty, this was something that was taught to you. And there's also this feeling that money is not something you could have, it's something that others could have. That's another fear-based set that you find in the money realm, because realistically it's like you feel like that blockade occurs because you're like, something about me reaching money is unattainable. And that's basically why you have a fear of money, because it's not something that you feel that you can possess. So therefore you end up in a version of struggle, or you feel like in order to have money, it comes with struggle. So those are some fear sets that can be formulated around money that a lot of us have, or a lot of us don't even understand it or haven't even thought about it. Like a lot of us in our lives end up in a place where, like, let's say we have to work 2 jobs or 3 jobs to make our life work. We don't stop to see where the focus should go. Instead of addressing why we're doing 3 jobs to have the life we want, or the life of just paying bills, let's say, the shift in focus of our perspective is what needs to change to eliminate those jobs, or find that one job that covers all of it. But for some of us, we don't even think that that's a possibility. And if you're somebody who is working extremely hard, or feels like you have to struggle to find money, then this kind of work is perfect for you. Because the thing is that you do see others out there that have it, so you know that it's possible. And that's the only thing you need to know, is that it's possible. There's no difference between you and someone else. Yes, let's say if somebody was raised in money, but what about the other 75%, or let's say even 90% of the world that is able to have that one job, or have that freelance, or live a different life than you? What separates you? Nothing. That is the truth. People will say, oh, it's where I came from, it's what I'm facing. But here's the thing, and this is something that I had to learn because I lived in poverty for most of my life, is that it, and a lot of like famous people, let's say it could even be clothing designers or even artists that end up making it, they usually tend to come from humble beginnings. So it's not to say that all of us understand what it's like to have money. So the thing is that if you do feel like you're struggling, when you have to actually look at this fear, it's because you have to shift the focus to say to yourself, for once and for all, what impedes me from thinking that I'm different than that person who has that money? And that's why shadow work is imperative, because if you can break down every single one of those fears associated with money, associated with lack mentality, associated with the thought that you have to struggle for money, those 2 equations need to change. So the thing is that you have to figure out what it is that will get you out of that struggle. And the minute that you find out what will get you, so if you're the 3 job person and you know that there's one job that you could have that will afford you the life, or if there's a place you can move that would afford you that life, that's what shadow work will help you see, so that you can feel confident enough to know that those things are attainable. You're not stuck in the rut you believe you are. Because the thing is, that's the one thing that's separating you from lack and having, is that you think that you don't deserve to have. So if you can figure out what it is that is stopping you or impeding you from seeing that, and let's say, for example, it's, oh, I need that one job, but I need to go to school and I need to get credentials to go get that job. Through shadow work, through actually acknowledging that to yourself, because a lot of people won't. They'll just stay in the struggle and tell themselves that's what it is and continue on and live their whole lives like that. Or they could say to themselves, no, today's the day that I decide to go to school to get those credentials. And that's the first step in the shadow work, because you're facing that lack mentality. You're saying to yourself directly, I can have what I want. So when it comes to any of these fears I'm talking about, be it love, be it happiness as well, it's the same type of idea. So when you go into love, what the shadow is usually surrounding around, let's say, for example, all of us are after love. All of us want to be in love. All of us want the love of our, and this can do with friends or your family or those patrons around you. We all want to be loved. So there's a lot of scariness surrounding love. And that's the part that people don't want to acknowledge, and that's the shadow. Like, a lot of people want love, but they're scared of love. A lot of people want love, but they manipulate with money. A lot of people want love, but they don't want to give in and expose themselves. There's so many limitations we put on ourselves, even to acquire the one thing we want, which is love. So let's say, for example, you're somebody that has a lot of fear surrounding love, and that's totally normal and cool. Most of the fears have to do with abuse, let's say, some form of abuse. It could be mental abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, and I really hope that's not the people I'm talking to, but it is something. Because if you equate love with a formulation of abuse, let's say, your shadow is going to reflect this attribute. Because the thing is like, your version of what love is already askew. So how you actually morph your view of love to come out of that idea that abuse equates love. That's what I'm saying. I'm using all of these situations because I want to address what the shadow is. This right here, this equation is what your shadow is going to protect you from. Your shadow is going to ensure that you are more aloof, that you stay apart, that you don't get invested. Because if you do get invested, you have a susceptibility to maybe perhaps be around those that will take advantage. There are so many levels to what abuse equating love in a shadow can present itself as. So let's say, for example, it's not even that strong. Let's say your fear is love hurting. Let's say, for example, you're like, I don't get into true love because I stay more superficial because love can hurt me. That is not just to do with abuse. Hurt could be anything. It could be hurting you in time. It can be hurting you in, let's say, loss of commitments to others. There's so many ways that love can hurt you as a person. It doesn't have to formally be with abuse of any kind. It's just that love, and let's say if the person were to leave you, that also hurts. It doesn't matter what type of partner you have, it hurts to be left. So this could be your fear that your shadow protects you from. And again, you tend to do things where you stay more superficial in order to never dive into the pool of love so that you protect yourself. And that protection is your shadow self, stopping you from actually jumping into the pool of love. Or you could have a fear of abandonment, and a lot of us do. We have tons and tons of abandonment issues from a very young age. So if you're somebody who tends to always be abandoned, what you try to not internalize is this idea that love is not attainable because they will leave. If you're somebody who's always been left or like been broken up with, or you're somebody that gets ghosted a lot, let's say in your relationships, let's say you never get closure, you would tend to be not just even aloof. You're probably at the point, at least with protection from your shadow, that you are at the point where you will get involved in love, but you will be the one to sabotage yourself so that you leave first. Because the thing is that abandonment is so deep of an ingrainment in our shadow that at any point in time that we feel that we're getting anywhere close to the person, we will do self-inflicted, opposing, contradictory things to our partner so that the person themselves starts to push away. And it's ironic because the thing is like, we don't want to be abandoned, but because we're so scared of being abandoned, we abandon our partner. And that's what a shadow aspect is that we may not see. Because the thing is that when we have these problems, the shadow is only going to reveal itself in the subconscious. Okay, it's going to reveal itself, let's say, in things like dreams, or it can manifest in our day-to-day lives. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's in the form of what people will call dis-ease, because you're actually going against what you truly desire. So the shadow is not, like I said, a seedy thing. It's more of what you're most fearful of exposing itself to you and you avoiding it. And by avoiding it actually puts you in the juxtaposition with what you want to desire. So that's why shadow work is so imperative. You have to find those little mustard seeds or granules of where your dysfunction comes with these things, so that you can grow that seed into something prosperous for yourself. So realistically, things even like codependency, this is all about the aspect of love. Okay, so codependency can be somebody who comes off maybe more needy, or they end up becoming or making their partners dependent on them, because they really and truly, the codependency is they cannot be left alone. So they may even do not internal sabotages, they may sabotage their own partner so that they don't get a leg up, so they don't leave them. So the thing is like there's so many different aspects to love of how the shadow works itself. You could be one of those people that have been so hurt. Like I said, love hurts, right? And you could be a head over heart person by this point. You could be somebody that's like, I only get into love or loving someone when it makes sense on paper. It's like the equation of paper, or how they look on the books, so to speak, is proper enough that I can equate giving my heart. There are those that are in that type of shadow that don't realize that the reason why they're head over heart is because they're so terrified of revealing any heart space whatsoever. They're basically equating like, oh, if you look good on paper, I will make this work. It's manageable. So that's a totally different version of person that's working through a different aspect or needing to find that granule. And usually it's because they also may have an issue with money. Like I said, was the first fear set that we discussed. And if those two things are tied, love and money, it's like sometimes you'll notice that people equate money with love. It's like, oh, if I have a lot of money, I know that I'll have a partner. There's so many levels to how the shadow shows itself. But the thing is that I would say if you're head over heart, it's more because you're comfortable in a contract or a understanding with a person versus giving yourself in a heart space to another person. So in this case, I would even say that you're not even able to dip your proverbial toe in the waters of love. And that is where you would have to get into the shadow, to a sense where you would have to extinguish that idea of contractual or measurable components to reveal a heart. That is where I'm saying that mustard seed is somewhere in there. And what's another one? Back to this, the quid pro quo. There's those, not just with money, but they could even be doing it in the sense where they're like, oh, if I offer you up my love in some capacity, I need an equal response from my partner to stay invested in this love. Quid pro quo. It's like you'll only give if you receive, and it doesn't have to be monetary. It could be emotional or physical. Okay, and that again is a way to save face. That's another way to prevent themselves from being hurt. So all of these formulations of love, and this, like I said, can go with family, with friends. You could do these levels of love with different people. And how you get out of this mentality or change that perspective from fearing love to desiring love, as Carl Jung expresses, and I've always expressed, is like to get into the heart space. You have to like really dissect what it is that is stopping you. And once you've realized what's stopping you, you have to peel back that banana one peel at a time. Do insistent things to do the opposite of what you're currently doing. That's a very good rule of thumb with the shadow. think about it. Light, shadow, you know. If you're somebody that has to be quid pro quo, or you're somebody that has a head over heart mentality, the first time you realize it and engage with this idea, what you have to do in the next circumstance is to change it. So many programs. Yeah, exactly. So many levels to this game. Thank you so much, Adam, for chiming in. I hope you're having a great night. It's Saturday night. Yeah. The next thing I'll say is the next level or program is success. A lot of us, like I said, money, love, success, happiness. Those are the simple four desires I'm talking about. But let's say, for example, success can be leveled as well. Most of us have this idea of, you know, being seen, being accepted, finding our freedom from our achievements in life. And that's what we mean by success, to have our actual achievements bring us freedom in a sense. Okay, that could be on any level. You could be the best potato farmer for all I care. You know what I mean? But like, that's your success in life, and that's totally a huge success because, you know, I know nothing about potato farming, so you're already on the next level ahead of me type of deal. Work out, yeah. So when it comes to success and when you're dealing with the shadow there, some of us actually, like I said, back to the money and from love, is that we will sabotage our success. Because realistically, we're scared of one of these things. We're scared of either being seen, being accepted, finding our freedom. I know that sounds weird. You might be saying to me, what do you mean? I want all those things. Yeah, those are the desires, right? But the fears attached to those desires is what Jung was always talking about, and this is what I truly understand too. There's something about being seen. I can speak to that front, okay? Because I myself, as someone who lived a different life for many, many years, coming on to this platforms and trying to profess what I need to profess, that was something that I struggled with as well. It was like, oh, how do I change this perception of myself and do something I've never done? But as I went through my shadow work, I realized, no, girl, you got to get on that camera. No, girl, you got to face this fear. And I'm saying I have many things that I still have to work on. But the great thing is that I understand the system now. And this is the type of introspection system that if you realize what's going on in your particular life or how you fall into this fear desire set, you'll realize that once you conquer each one, you evolve tremendously and beautifully. So that's why I go through this with all of you guys, because this might be the way I do it, but I hope you guys want to do this type. It's a lot of work, but it's so beneficial because it's for you. You get to benefit. You're the respondent. You're the one that's going to get it all. So when it comes to success, being seen, being accepted for who you truly are is one of the hardest things. If you tell me that it's not the hardest thing, like, we wear masks all the time. So being accepted for who we truly are is a fear. A lot of us share in that fear all the time, or we would just be our total selves from day one to day now. You get what I mean? But no, as we get older or we change or morph due to society or how we're brought up, etc., this accepted thing becomes a level of security that you possess by doing either protecting yourself with these masks when you talk to people at work or at home. Do you really reveal yourself to everyone? That is not the truth. Most of us don't. So it's really hard to do that. So that's why I put it in here. Finding your freedom from the achievement. I'll be honest, if all of us here were achieving everything that we sought out in our life or wanted to do, we wouldn't all be in the same boat probably when it comes to our mediocreness in our existence. A lot of people aren't talking about the thrills of their life because they're doing them all the time. They're talking about their problems. So realistically, achievement is not something that everybody sees all the time or even strives for. So that's why I put it, success is one of those desires that we all want, but we're terrified to pursue. And the reality is because that's one of the fear sets. I'm going to talk about the solutions. Please know, I'm getting to those. Okay, I'm talking about the solutions to a degree, but I'm going to pinpoint them a little more. The other thing I'll say, the last one is happiness, because that's a big lump sum idea, because people can find happiness in so many different ways. I could be happy as a pig and shit, literally just with an ice cream cone laying in the sun on a nice breezy day. But that's not the happiness for someone else. Someone else is like, no, I got to kick it in a Ferrari on the Autobahn. Everybody has a different form of happiness, okay? So that's why this one is very challenging, because a lot of us don't think we can attain it. That's number one. Much like the money issue, that abundance issue, they kind of tie into each other, because happiness is an abundant idea and mindset as well. And sometimes, just like the money thing, we equate this lack mentality with the idea that happiness is only attainable for some. Happiness isn't attainable for all. Realistically, I've never seen people that are happy complaining that they're happy, but only those that do not have happiness complain that they don't have happiness. So what I will say is that this is a lot to work with, and I'm going to talk about things that we should all pay attention to. But I did want to bring up one thing, and I'll give you an analogy of what I mean by the subconscious, because a lot of us are like, oh, the subconscious dreams, this, that. You can learn so much about shadow work from your subconscious dreams. It's insane. So I'll give you guys an idea, okay? If you truly want to analyze the shadow, let's say, for example, the dream I'm bringing up, and it could be a nightmare for some people, I will say that. Let's say you walk into a boardroom, you're about to give a meeting, and you're starting up the meeting just like I am right now. Okay, I'm starting up this meeting with all of you, all my kindred souls out there, and all of a sudden I look down and I'm naked. Okay, I think a lot of us have had that nightmare or dream, and the thing is that we think that it's about being naked that we're actually should be focused on. And sometimes when you have those dreams, you'll notice that there's actually people placed in this crowd that may have done this exact thing to you in your past. So I would say pay attention to those things when you're having these nightmares, because they're so great for exposing the shadow. Let's say, for example, it's not about being naked, it's about the alternate little girl or little boy problem of feeling foolish or being made to look foolish, the na in class, or it could even be like something that happened to you a long time ago. You're more concerned with looking foolish than you are about being naked in this dream, and that's what you'll pay attention to, is the nakedness and the nudity. But really what the underlying shadow aspect may be is that you're looking foolish, and that's your fear set. Okay, as Adam described, there's programs, there's levels to these things. So the thing is that you're triggered by looking foolish. It's not that you just don't, you might even be somebody who tries to look your best. And that's why this particular reason of you being nude, associating to the foolishness, is tied together. Because if you're somebody, let's say, that takes a lot of pride in yourself, it's like you would have to be nude in order for this shadow to be exposed in the dream. I hope you guys follow what I'm saying. Like if I was somebody that, dressed like a slob, my dream might be something like where I show up to an event and everybody's being gracious to how good I look. And I feel totally the opposite of who I am. I'm just trying to give you an example. But the reason why you're so triggered and mortified is because perhaps somewhere down in your past, or somewhere in your current even, it could be current, but it does take some time for these issues to reveal themselves. You could have been in that exact same situation. And I'm just going to give one example. I have to give my own. That's all I can do. Because I used to have this dream a lot when I was growing up, and I truly took so much time with my shadow to figure out what it was. And it all stemmed from a childhood situation I had in the playground, where the boy I really liked got told by my stupid friends that I wanted to kiss him after school. You know what I mean? It was those little kid situations, right? But the feeling I felt from this situation is the exact feeling I felt in those dreams. So that's why it took a long time to deduce where it came from by doing all this type of work. But what I want to say is that what it was that when I went to go kiss this boy after school, he pulled back, and everybody in the schoolyard, you got to believe, you know how it is, all the children come to see the big hurrah. And when he pulled back, everybody was laughing and pointing at me. So I'm saying, yes, I was like 9, but that was a situation where I felt that exact same scenario in the dream. So when you have these subconscious dreams trying to show you what your fears are, which in this case I'm presenting is to seem foolish, it may always tie back to something from your childhood. And I have to give those examples. I know it embarrasses me, but that's the only way I can equate what I'm trying to say with this. So the subconscious, please pay attention to those dreams, especially the nightmares. The nightmares are the ones that are trying to show you what a lot of these desires, money, love, success, happiness, and like, for example, like I said, me looking foolish would tie into the success portion of my desire in life. I don't want to look foolish because that would hinder my ability to be successful in life. So when you find these program sets like we've been discussing, that's how they can formulate. And the thing is that what it does in your present day is, let's say for example, the next time you're in board meetings, etc., you're more timid to present, you're more timid to be yourself. There's so many things that come with these subconscious underlying tones of the shadow. So I did want to just share that, because you might be somebody having dreams, the same occurring dreams, could be different scenarios, but the same situation, the same feeling happens every time. The whole surroundings could change, all the characters can change, but you still feel like that foolish person at the end. This is my example. Those dreams you must truly pay attention to, because it'll help you with these fear-based sets of the shadow. So there's that. So how this can develop in your everyday life in a physical sense. Like if you're somebody that thinks, oh no, it doesn't show up, it does. So let's say back to the money. If you're somebody who lives in lack, you'll notice that you're the type of person that might be a little more frugal. You might be somebody who doesn't give as much. You might be somebody that some would say is maybe miserly. They may not say it to your face, but you could be, and maybe internally you might know. Or you're terrified of loss. You're so protective of money that you hold on to every penny because you're terrified of losing it. Or you're embarrassed of the status you have with money. So the thing is that if you think that not dealing with the shadow doesn't formulate another personality trait in your everyday life, please know that that is probably a falsity, and I just want to be honest. So if you're somebody that is feeling like you want money and you do possess any of those 4 things, let's say, that I just mentioned about money, and you have to be brutally honest, right? Like no one's gonna, like I'm not asking you to tell me, you know what I'm saying? But like let's say for example, you're the type of person to go shopping, and instead of getting what you really want, you end up cheaping out and buying like 10 things that are of lesser cost, and that's how you never acquire the thing you truly want. So you might be more frugal based, but you don't want to admit it to yourself, or misery based because you're not willing to spend that money on yourself and or others, or you're terrified of loss of money, so you like hoard the money maybe in a bank account or in some deposit box because you're just scared of letting it go, or you're just embarrassed of your monetary center, so you don't really talk about it, and you don't really try to do anything outside of the norms of just paying the bills and making ends meet. So these things can formulate in your physical day-to-day. And if you see those types of traits, I would say most likely you have to work on these shadow aspects. Another thing with love, this one's tough, I know it is, we all want love, but a lot of us, and I'll say this, our shadow tends to always reveal that we don't feel like we're deserving. Hands down. Because if we were all deserving, we'd be in the most awesome, loving relationships all across the board. There are people that are in these loving relationships, and it's because they felt like they deserved it. I would put money on that. Or they have poor boundaries. So the thing is that somebody who's suffering from the shadow in a physical day-to-day sense, they may be a poor picker or have really bad boundaries with people. Because the thing is that they're so wanting the desire of love, they're not willing to do the shadow recovery, or they feel like If they have poor boundaries, that'll allow more people into their life to allow them this love. So that's another sign in your present life that you may need to do shadow work when it comes to love. Or you're a relationship sabotager. That's another thing, because you could be a relationship sabotager and not even know it. And I'll give another example. Sometimes you're in really bad relationships, and sometimes people can cheat. They can, let's say, become boring. They can, let's say, gain a lot of weight. Hey, hand to God right there. I've done that a lot of times when I was miserable. I would say, honestly, I would never do that again. But sometimes people can gain weight just to like push people or not stand up for the love they truly want. They might be in a miserable relationship, and because they have these poor boundaries, they don't express what they truly want, and they end up sabotaging the relationship in some way. Maybe they're not giving to the person in a more physical nature. They start to do these things so that they can not be found to have been out of love, or if they do find themselves out of love, it's because of their own self-infliction in the physical. That's what they're not seeing. It's like you're actually sabotaging it because you're not happy in the relationship you're in, because you probably don't think you're deserving. They all kind of intertwine. So that's another thing. Or you could be and I don't want to get people mad again, you could be the type who cheats because of that fear, or you could be the person who protects themselves too much, like I was talking about earlier, or you're the type to ghost, but when things get too close. So there's so many ways that love can show itself in a physical sense when dealing with the shadow. And that's for that one. Success. Oh, success is such a tricky one. Success is the type of thing that we all truly want, but it's like, are we willing to do the work, or are we willing to get over these things? It's tough. Like, are you willing to work on your own? Like, let's just say, for example, to really go and back your own story, go and back your own idea and actually go for it. That's a tough nugget for a lot of people to swallow. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people still struggle with a lot of these different things. And like I said, even with love and codependency, to be successful in your own right is a very scary place to be, because you got to go after what you want, sometimes solitarily or sometimes in a group, depending on how good your stronghold is with your backing of your friends and your family. But you have to be okay to go after it. That's the only way people become successful in anything. So what you may be doing is not allowing that to occur in places such as procrastination. People think that procrastination has nothing to do with the shadow. They just think they're lazy, or they just can't get started, or no. I say no to that one. I say it's all about shadow, because again, it's about this success. Because if you equate getting off the couch and doing something to success, you would already have it. Now, wouldn't you, Mr. or Mrs. Procrastinator? So if you think that shadowing is not a part of procrastination, it is. Same with gambling. Maybe you're the type of person who gets so close to achieving, and then you do something frivolous and you gamble it away. And I don't mean at the casino. It could be you make a poor decision in planning, something to that effect. You gamble its effectiveness. Maybe right at the end, or in the middle, or at the apex point leading to your success. You might be a gambler. That's how it's manifesting in your physical life. You never get to that full execution of what you're after, because you always piss it away somehow and you don't know why. It's because you're not facing that shadow side of yourself. And then it has to do with sabotage. We tend to sabotage ourselves all through this whole thing. Sabotage is probably one of the main things that we don't recognize in our shadow, but it's actually breaking down that word sabotage on so many layers, as you're seeing here. Now, the thing is, happiness, like I said, is one of those larger ones that encompasses all of these things. Sometimes some of us feel like if we have money, love, success, we'll be happy. It could equate, right? And if you're one of those people, then you might have to work on the shadow of happiness, because sometimes happiness, and most times happiness, should be found within. But how do you get there if you have equations for what happiness is? That's probably an issue right there. Or if you can't find joy in your day-to-day, that might be another issue, that you struggle with your shadow when it comes to happiness or enjoying yourself. Um, Sometimes a lot of us manifest this in a different way, and I'll say this physically. We put parameters on when it's going to happen. Oh, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy here. I'll be happy then. That in itself is a shadow aspect as well, because you feel like you can't have it today. You feel like it's something so far reaching, so unattainable. So if you're somebody that's like, oh, I put parameters on my happiness and it's only going to happen when that happens, you most likely need to do some shadow work, because that goes back to what I was saying about the fears when it even comes to the money situation. It'll feed into all of these. They're very similar patterns, but the thing is how do you dissect which one of these trigger points I'm talking about here is your trigger point? If you could find those triggers, you won the prize. Like, that's basically how the shadow works. Or, like I said at the very beginning of happiness, you think it's something that's out there. It's something that you got to go get. It's not something that you have within you or is attainable within oneself. Sometimes people, like, not just the parameters, they actually feel like it's from physical objects, or a person or a place or a thing will make them happy. So it's not like the someday person. The someday still has a day. Whereas the person who thinks it's from things, that's a cup that is never going to get filled, my friend. You are basically giving yourself the unfillable cup scenario. And that's a huge shadow problem. Because the thing is like, what I would say for that, how do you fix this? I would say, in the most part, gratitude. Gratitude is a huge contributor to fighting the shadow when it comes to happiness. That's one major thing. Because the thing is that if you can find your gratitude in a day, you can find little happinesses in a day. And if you can see that you can be happy with the small, you can realize how to equate to the large. So sometimes gratitude is a good conductor or a way to combat in a shadow aspect of self. When it comes to success, I would say find which issue you have with success. Is it about being seen? Is it about being accepted? Is it about um, finding the freedom in your achievements, going out and actually achieving what you want, what you need to do to be successful in whatever right that is? And usually, like I said, if you're procrastinating, you're a gambler of your time, of your ability, or if you're somebody that sabotages in any of those ways, what I would say the first thing and foremost thing when it comes to success and facing the shadow is that I would start with the simplest thing, which is probably the procrastination. If you're somebody that says, oh no, I don't procrastinate, I go after things and they just never work out, that's the thing. So you would have to deduce why it's never working out. What is it that's not taking you to the next level? And I am not somebody who hasn't had to do this and will continue to do this, because as you guys know, I have a very small following and I would like it to grow, and I'm going to figure out which aspect of my shadow I need to address to make it morph so that I exude the energetic resonance that gets me what I'm desiring. Do you get? We're getting there. Okay. So basically, this is always an ongoing challenge and an ongoing process that we never truly get rid of. It's like, literally, if you guys know about, we've all watched Peter Pan, the shadow's always there. The minute we get rid of the shadow, I think that's when we, become crystalline, because we're just completely all light. If that's possible in a dual place, I would love to know. But for now, these things are what I would say are the targets of what you need to kind of dissect in your life to see where your triggers lie. There's bombs all through this page that I just showed you. If you felt that anything I said triggered you, I would just write them down. And what I would say is, the first thing you do after writing them down, put the word why. Why does this bother me? And let the writing roll, because you'll say, oh, it bothers me because she was on point, or it bothers me because she doesn't seem to know what I'm feeling. It could be anything. Just let the pen write and write. And you will notice that your fears or your subconscious is talking to you. That's what I would say is great about dreams, about writing, journaling. But I would say really take the time to dissect all of these things because it's an ongoing work. Carl Jung devised this, or was the first maybe to read and talk about it, but at the same time we all go through this every day. We all have these fear sets we want and desire so much, but we're too scared to get all that we desire. So I feel like I'm somebody who's working towards this. I'm working really hard, and I've done a lot of these pattern program breakdowns because not all of us start with a leg up in life. Not all of us have all the money to begin with to feel abundant all the time. And we don't come into this world with everyone loving us. And we don't come into this world as the most successful. Like, I mean, there's very few, like I said at the beginning of this, maybe like 5 to 10% of people have those hookups, have all the love, have all the abundance. And the thing is that they're lacking in one other thing, maybe, perhaps, maybe happiness. Maybe that doesn't make them happy. So they'll still have to do shadow work. So it doesn't matter if you have 3 out of 4. It doesn't matter if you have 1 out of 4. You still got something to dissect and figure out, because the real goal, I think, out of all of this would be the happiness. The happiness encompasses all of it. So I'm just trying to say, like, guys, shadow work is not something for the weak of heart. It'll make you cry. It'll make you scream. It'll make you suffer. But it's so rewarding when you find what those things are and you challenge them, because they won't have a hold on you. And once they don't have a hold on you anymore, you actually start working in the success. You know what I'm saying? Because even those things are little successes. It's always working in its own way. So I just want to share that, guys. I hope you guys have a lovely night. Thank you, Adam, for coming on, and whoever else. I saw several people chime in here and there. I'm starting to get better at figuring out how to do the lives, be about the lives. But this is what I mean, shadow work is always far-reaching and far understanding, and it just depends on the person if they want to do the work or not. I hope that something I said here triggered you, because that's the first step. Triggering is great. And what I do want to say is that a lot of these things, like I said, if they don't get handled, they do manifest in weird, awkward ways in our personality, what I like to call aspects of ourselves develop, or masks or facades of ourselves develop to cover this shadow up. Or they could even come in the forms of disease over time, because it's like swallowing a walnut all the time. Eventually, this is going to, take a beating as you. So it's kind of the same thing when you're kind of putting your energetic, emotional body through the mistreatment of oneself that happens by not even tackling or looking at the shadow. It could result in disease in some way, shape, or form down the road. So actually going through these things and figuring out what your quirks are, what your challenges are, what your path is, and maybe what your platitudes are when it comes to all these levels of the 4 that I talked about, the 4 desires, it'll be useful and introspectful for you. So I hope that helps, and I hope you guys have a wonderful Saturday, wonderful life. There was one last thing. No, this was a side note, but I can't remember. So I guess I'm going to do another vid tomorrow or something if it comes and jogs in my memory. It had nothing to do with this. It was something I wanted to tell you guys, but I hope you guys have a good one. Love you lots. Bye for now. Peace out.